Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the other side of your screen. I am Spencer Holbrook, fresh out of the barber chair. Barber's not a sponsor, but he could be if he wanted to be, if he's watching the show. What's up, Jack? Thanks for cutting my hair today. I'm feeling really good, Mick. We got a great show here lined up for everybody. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I got my Lettermen Row gear on, but I'm fascinated by this little dog you have on there. Is that a specific brand? Because it looks incredibly comfortable. It feels like you got
Yeah,
a great fit, great feel type of sweatshirt you
yeah,
got there.
yeah. Best Rowback, best fit, best feel, man. Use the code Letterman20 right now. Letterman20, Lettermen20 right now, and you get 20% off your first order over at Rowback. They've been a long time collaborator with the program here. We do appreciate our friends over at Rowback, but we also appreciate when Ryan Day gives us quotes to talk about. And boy, did he give a real humdinger on Wednesday night in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, Mick. We usually talk keys to the game. I want to just talk about one key here, and that is to stay locked in. Okay, so if you don't know the way that we do these things on Thursdays, I come out with a story that's called Three Keys. It's pretty self-explanatory. Three keys for Ohio State to win its game that week, and uh, usually we break down all three of the keys. But Ryan Day said something Wednesday night that just has me really, it perked my ears up, that you would normally only see from like a cat, Mick. Um, he said some things along the lines of you're allowed to be pissed off sometimes. It's my job and it's our job as coaches, and it's the job of the leaders to make sure that we wake up with a bad attitude every day and that we're showing up with an edge. It's okay if you piss somebody off once in a while because that's how you have to play this game. This game is not played any other way. That's the way we have to practice. And if we're practicing that way, we're going to play that way. Man, Mick, like Ryan Day is setting a tone here for this team, and it's not on accident.
No, it's not at all. And I think he even at one point in there, and I kind of pop in and out of the presser. Spencer's active, asking questions, kind of typically writes a story or something on it, gets it up on Letterman Row. I'm kind of floating around talking to different players, the coaches walking off the field, trying to get things confirmed recruiting wise. So I don't hear it all, but I did. My ears did perk up a little bit as well on this along the same lines. Just him talking about the fights in the spring, just kind of like, hey, we had to make guys run 53s. Like I've never heard him use the term 53s or even kind of like the disciplinary action or just so like it was just interesting. Like he was really trying to get the competitive juices flowing on Wednesday night, which was pretty interesting to me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that he said was that the group is edgy. You're seeing it with that group. They understand that they can't have penalties. They have to be disciplined, but they're also not going to back down from anybody. Um, he's trying to get this team ready to win a national championship, and I think it goes hand in hand with something that I don't really pay attention. I think Matt Rule has a podcast right now where he talks about his team every week. The Ohio State doesn't have a Ryan Day podcast, but they do have the Caleb Downs podcast where you can get some insight into what's going on with the program here and there.
Down's the business for anybody that's looking for a
Yeah,
shot.
they're. I mean, I would rather them listen to this, but I understand the sentiment there. Uh, you know, I thought it was interesting that Caleb and he had Sonny Styles and Lorenzo Styles on the show this week, and they were talking about how intense Ryan Day has been this year. He's like, Coach Day's not messing around right now. He's talked, and they even said that last year they ended up getting better from a loss. They don't want to have to go through a loss this year to get better. They just want to get better. And if you marry that notion from the players that are talking about it, kind of publicly right now, with the idea of what Ryan Day was talking about on Wednesday night in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where this team is edgy. They're playing with an edge. They want to get better every day. They have to get better every day. There's no days off. You have to come in pissed off every day. Like, I really like the messaging from this team right now. And maybe that's trying to keep these guys' attention to avoid a letdown after going to the West Coast and getting a big road win and finally having some national people really buy into this team, even though they had already beaten Texas. But to me, it signals that Ryan Day doesn't see that this team is going to let up, and he expects that they don't let up. And they have to continue to push, even though they're the number one team in the country, the reigning national champions, and now the national championship favorite again.
Yeah, and obviously, like it kind of gets overblown or talked about, like, oh, he won a national championship. He knows what it's like, but he really does at this point. Like when he enters this season, when you get ready for a game like Minnesota, he knows what kind of buttons you got to press, what levers you got to pull down to make sure guys know that while it is Minnesota and that they're not as talented, like Minnesota's still got a good quarterback. They like you guys still like Washington moved the ball on you guys last week. We still had struggles in the red zone or for the offensive line or the offense. Like, he understands, like, there's things that Ohio State has to work on, even if they beat Washington 24-6 and they don't give up a touchdown and they score on a majority of their possessions, even though they only have 6. Like, there's a lot of that you and I and the other people on the beat can be like, wow, Ohio State did this to Washington. That's impressive. Or I think Ryan Day, he jokes about it all the time, but like, whether it's being content or happy or are you satisfied, like, people like to hit like those kind of types of questions with them about really any topic. And his answer is essentially like, no, I never am. And sometimes he tries to make a joke out of it, but I think he's 100% serious when he says it. Is like, he understands now what you have to do and like the pressure you have to apply to constantly be at that top level.
Well, and I think, maybe I talked about it on here a couple weeks ago, or maybe I was just talking about it with some folks off camera, but it's almost a little bit of this. No, I did. I put it in one of the stories at lettermenrow.com, and I think we talked about it. It's a little bit of the Sabanification of Ryan. I know it's not a word. Maybe Webster's can get that in the next printing of the dictionary. Do they still print dictionaries, Mick?
They 100% do.
Oh, okay. Well, Webster's not a sponsor either. They could be. I think it's just a little bit more of that evolution of Ryan as a head coach, where he's now talking earlier in his career. When I was listening to his press conferences and being in there and hearing him and asking him questions, it's like, he wants more from his offense, even in a win. He wants more from his defense, even in a win. He wants to get more statistics, even in the wins. Now it's like, hey, you got to win the game, and it doesn't matter how you win the game, but we have to look good doing it. Just like overall, we have to hold ourselves to a standard. And once you get to that level, you become a little different. That's how Nick Saban operated as a head coach. That's a little bit of where Urban Meyer operated, although I think there were times where he was so intense that it led to major letdowns. Hello, Iowa. Hello, Purdue, as two prime examples of that. Hello, people not really wanting to, not really loving working with Urban there at points for everything that he was great at. So like, the great ones all get to that point where they are not satisfied with anything. And that's why they say that every head coach has to be a little crazy. And I think Ryan is getting to that point, man, in his career. Like, one of the other things that he said on Wednesday night that just really, really I've gravitated to. And we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, just past the 3:00 hour on the East Coast, which makes me sound like a radio host. It's about that's 3:00 on the East Coast here. But I've been thinking about this all day on Thursday. It's like Ryan Day said that Ohio State has to be the most desperate and hungry team, because the most desperate and hungry team is going to win every Saturday. We have to make sure that we wake up every day with the same mentality. And when you win games week after week, sometimes that's not easy to do. He knows that it's not easy what this team is trying to accomplish. This program has never won back-to-back national championships. So for him to be pushing this button ahead of the 5th game of the season, he knows that it is a critical juncture in the season. You're going on the road next week and the week after that. You just got off the road. You're just coming back from the West Coast, a big win in a hostile environment. But, man, if you think Minnesota is the time that you're going to let up, you are absolutely wrong.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because we mentioned Nick Saban. There's so many like Nick Saban disciples, like Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian. Like, there's so many guys that work for Nick Saban and like knew him more intimately than Ryan Day. But like, it feels like Ryan Day is the only one that like the coach that is doing the best job of like the Nick Saban idea. And I think Josh Pace talks about this often over another Rivals or On Three type of guy that we have that does a great national podcast. But he mentions like Saban's idea of like focusing on the process over the results. And like Ryan Day, you can see it when he talks about like you said, we got to be like on their throats every week. We got to be there every single time because like you can't let up. It's not about the result by the end of this Saturday. It's about the result at the end of the season. But you have to have that long process in between. And you can even hear that like when he talks about like he talked about Aaron Scott, and you wrote a good story about it. Is like he's the first guy to the 30, like the past 14 kickoffs. Like that is very much a process stat over it is our result stat. But then look, you continue to do the process, you get the results, and then like Aaron Scott will now also be playing more defense now because he did the process the correct way. It's the same thing with like the red zone stat. You and I were all kind of talking about it, like 75% in the red zone, like getting like that many points or like scoring touchdowns is very difficult to do. But if you set yourself a lofty goal and continue to work at that through your process, you will hit that. And it seems like he is very much like emphasized the idea of the process, getting there every single week. And it's funny because Kirby Smart you lose to Alabama again. You have Steve Sarkisian, who's kind of going through the motions. Like, they're winning games, but it's not been super great. And the one coach that did not actually coach directly with Nick Saban is doing his process over results better than anybody. That's kind of one of the more fascinating underlying stories here.
Yeah, that is interesting. It is interesting. You know what else is interesting, Mick? I obviously got my ears lowered today, and I haven't shaved my face yet. But when I do, I'm going to grab that sweet, sweet razor from our friends over at the Dollar Shave Club. When you rep your team, don't stop at the jersey, Mick. You don't have to stop at the jersey. You can rep it in every way possible. Dollar Shave Club's collegiate razor handles combine grooming with glory, letting students, grads, and fans show their school spirit and style. From the sink to the stadium, shave with school pride. Visit dollarshaveclub.com today and grab your college handle. They've got a beautiful little Ohio State handle. We know you don't shave. You haven't shaved in a fortnight. Well, way longer than a fortnight.
That doesn't mean it. I mean, we got a diversified audience here. Like, hey, maybe Spencer needs a razor. But there's males and females. Everybody needs a razor every now and then. Go to Dollar Shave Club. Get your Ohio State handle. Get it so you can do the face or the legs or whatever you got to do. And if you do it with Dollar Shave Club. Get that Ohio State handle and be rocking it, because you got to get yourself all gussied up and ready to go on Saturday for this Minnesota game.
You heard that. You heard that right, folks. Mick Walker shaves the legs. They look like a baby's bottom. Hey, the other thing that I got to tell you about Mick is that college football season's in full swing. We're already in week 6. I hate this because it just flies by, but we're also in the greatest month on the calendar. There's 12 of them. There's a top 2, and this one ain't number 2. October is the very best month of the year. That means college football season's in full swing. The Modelo Recruiter is back in action, looking to reward full-time fans who give their all for their team. If you're listening to this, you're not quite being recruited by Ohio State, but you've been recruited, and it's time for an ice-cold reward. Modelo is the perfect reward for your fandom and the official beer sponsor of the college football playoff. Buckeyes fans, you deserve a Modelo, so go buy a Modelo today. Mick, what else have you learned this week? What else do you want to see from this team? And where do you want to take this conversation? The other 2 goals that I set for Ohio State were to kind of air it out, against this Minnesota pass defense, and then to apply the pressure when Minnesota passes. Which one of those kind of catches your ear?
I'll definitely go with the Minnesota one, like you said, getting pressure on the court. Like you and I asked, like Spencer and I chat a lot during the week, and I asked Spencer earlier. Like I said, is Drake Lindsey the best passing quarterback Ohio State's played this season, the Minnesota starter? And I think there's a real case he is. And that's going to be honestly an awesome test for Ohio State, because PJ Fleck has good wide receivers. Like, he consistently kind of has good guys. I think that's his former position. So they know what they're doing there. You're going to get Davison Igbinosun tested. You're going to get Jermaine Matthews tested. And I was walking off the field with somebody on Wednesday night. And I was like, hey, what do you guys think about the quarterback? Like, who's kind of been playing the scout team quarterback? And they're like, oh, a couple of guys. But all I know is that we're going to throw a lot at that quarterback. The freshman is what they even enunciate. Like, he's a freshman quarterback that hasn't seen a lot. And Ohio State's going to throw a lot at him on Saturday to kind of confuse him, because this is their first time where they can kind of maybe mix some more coverages up and try and see if you can bait guys into things. And maybe that results in something cool for bold predictions that we shoot on Friday and talk about then. But I do think it'll be interesting to see what they do to get to Drake Lindsey, or just maybe if you don't even get to him, if Caleb Downs just has him kind of locked up in a little torture chamber of a box because he can't really see the field, that's a big win as well for not only the Ohio State, but also the defensive line to have more time to get pressure.
Yeah, I mean, when he's not pressured, he's fantastic. And honestly, I think Drake Lindsey is one of the better pro prospects when it comes to eventual down the road pro prospect Big Ten quarterbacks that the league has right now. He is very good. He's big. He's strong. He's got a really good arm. He connected with one of the receivers on a 78-yard pass that got him down inside the 5-yard line. He's going to test this Ohio State secondary down the field with deep shots if Ohio State can't pressure him. Now, this Minnesota offensive line, I think, is better than Washington's, but still not one of the elites in the league. It's not your older brother's Minnesota offensive line that was really stout up front. They can't run the football because nobody's healthy right now. Their second-string running back, who actually, oddly enough, Ohio State faced Turner. I can't remember his first name, but they faced him when he was at Marshall a couple years or last year, and now he's at Minnesota. He's out for the season. And then Darius Taylor, who's one of the best backs in the Big Ten when he's healthy, hasn't been healthy since week 2. That's why they lost to Cal. I think they couldn't run the ball there. So like, this isn't a Minnesota offensive line that's of the vintage variety like PJ Fleck has kind of had there year in and year out. This is a group that's kind of going through some growing pains and some struggles, and rightly so when you don't have your starting right tackle, because he's lining up at right tackle for Ohio State this year. So, and your left tackle from last year, is now playing for the Houston Texans and doesn't look all that great as a rookie. So
certainly participating in playing football on Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing, but I don't know how well he's playing because CJ is on his back all the time for the Texans. But this isn't a Texans show. I think that there's an opportunity here for Ohio State to continue the positive momentum. Caden Curry, Caden McDonald, Edric Houston, Tywone Malone, Kenyatta Jackson. That group had a really, really strong day on Saturday. And yeah, I include Edric in that because I think you have to continue to include him. Ohio State's going to keep giving him opportunities. He just needs to get out of whatever he's in right now. And I think he eventually will. They had a really good day against Washington. And again, I think this is a step up from that Washington offensive line, but it's still not something Ohio State shouldn't be able to handle. And it's this week against Minnesota, and then next week you go against an Illinois offensive line that got whipped by Duke, even in a win over the Blue Devils. The Blue Devils defensive line looked good against the Illinois offensive line. They got manhandled by the Indiana defensive line a few weeks ago. So all that being said, I thought even USC's defensive line, which I don't think is great, it did some decent things against the Illinois offensive line. So you're looking at now a 3-week stretch where you can really build some momentum on this defensive line and get the ball rolling, where you dominated Washington. You can really try to pressure Drake Lindsey and get after Minnesota. Then you can go on the road at Illinois and shut that crowd up on key third downs and things like that, getting to Luke Altmaier next week. So you're talking about starting to gain some momentum here on this defensive line, but that can only happen if you string together a second straight performance, which is why I think it's so critical that they are really, really good against Drake Lindsey up front on Saturday.
Yeah, and like you said, it makes it like you got a talented offensive line, and again, it goes back to the process. Even if this is not the best offensive line you face, like you still got Penn State coming, Michigan's offensive line for whatever like they may be at the end of the season is still going to be well coached and going to be a solid offensive line. So you have to do things right against Minnesota, and you have to do things right around Illinois and Wisconsin, so that when November 1st rolls around after that off week, you come out guns a-blazing versus Penn State, and you actually take advantage of this Jim Knowles defense, which I think not only the Ohio State offensive players want to do, but the Ohio State defensive players want to see after the way things kind of went down with Mr. Knowles.
Yeah. So, I think this Minnesota game can reveal a lot about this Ohio State team. I talked about that a little bit over on 10 TV Plus with Austin Ward on Wednesday night after the media availability. He was kind enough to have me on the show, and we chatted about some things and some things a little bit along this line of the defensive line and the intensity from Ryan Day. But I did want to hash it out a little bit more here and just see where we're at with Ryan Day and with this team right now and how they're trying, easy for me to say, to string all of this along and put together good performances. So I'm looking forward to getting in the horseshoe on Saturday night. The Buckeyes are a 23.5-point favorite, but that doesn't mean that I think it's up to 24 on BetMGM now. So, people think that Ohio State's going to win this game pretty easily, and I tend to agree with them. But I still think that it's going to be kind of revealing. We're going to be able to learn a lot about this team. And, hey, man, it's the only home game of October, which stinks for everybody involved. But,
what is it, 12? Or are we at 6 of 12? Are we at the halfway point? Or are we at this is 5? I'm losing track.
This will be 5.
So we're almost there, folks. Whether you got to learn something about the team every week. I mean, Spencer articulated that very well. Whether that's the offense, the defense, we got 12 opportunities guaranteed every year. Whether it's to go to the stadium to go to a game, or to learn about your team, or to watch your team. So you got to take advantage of all those 12.
Yeah, I'm excited. 7:30 NBC. If you're going to the game, you have all day to tailgate. It's only the second Big Ten home night game of the new TV contract. The other one was in November against Michigan State, not Minnesota State. Back in November 11th, 2023. So this is only the second Big Ten home night game since 2023. So it's a great time to take advantage of it. It's also a great time to take advantage of $1 for your first 7 days over at LettermenRow.com. Come hang out with us in the Letterman Lounge message board. We're there all the time chatting. Mick Walker's dropping a recruiting scoop with Alex Gleitman and Jeremy Birmingham. Austin Ward and myself have you covered on the team side. This has just been a Lettermen Row video, though. So make sure you hit the bell below, like the video below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get a little notification every time we have a video posted over here on the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. For Mick Walker, I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow for some bold predictions and score picks on what's going to happen when Ohio State and Minnesota meet in the horseshoe on Saturday night.